right, welcome back. Apologies for that. Just a little bit of a battery issue with my microphone, but we've got it sorted out and we're ready to go. Now, reflecting on the 25 years since the formation of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which happened in 1989, the SA Human Rights Commission will be hosting a roundtable dialogue to find out ways to further promote and protect our children's rights. Joining us now in studio is Kayum Ahmed. He is the Human Rights Commission's CEO. Always good to see you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
So today is actually Global Children's Day.
Absolutely.
What happens on a day like this?
On a day like this, we really have an opportunity to reflect on how far we've come, particularly as a country, as South Africa, 20 years into our democracy, 25 years since the Convention on the Rights of the Child has been adopted. And we have an opportunity to look at the achievements, and there have been some wonderful achievements over the past 20 years, but also at the gaps and the challenges we face as a country and what we can do as a Chapter 9 institution, as the Human Rights Commission, to try and work alongside government to bridge these gaps.
All right, so looking back on our history now, we talk about changes in the last 24 years and the rights of children. Have they improved or have they not improved?
To some extent, there's a good news story to tell. I think on the one hand, in terms of legislation, we have some of the most progressive legislation in the world. Section 28 of our Constitution has been hailed as one of those provisions that really goes out of its way to protect the rights of the child. We also have near universal access to basic education, which essentially means that about 98 to 99% of children have access to basic education. But of course, there's a long way to go. We recently conducted a survey in which 64% of children in South Africa continue to live in poverty. We know about the challenges around basic education, the quality of education in South Africa. And we know that some of the interventions that government has put in place, such as scholar transport or nutrition schemes at schools, have unfortunately not been rolled out to the extent that we'd like. So there are significant gaps that need to be filled, and I think that there's still a long way to go, despite the wonderful achievements that we've made.
Who's responsible for protecting the rights of children in the society? Before the law and the government, aren't communities more likely to make a bigger change than anything else?
That's an absolutely essential point. I think there's an African proverb which clearly describes this, that it takes a village to raise a child. And essentially, I think our communitarian approach to raising children is certainly something that we need to adopt as a country and as a society. One of the major challenges around that, of course, is that we've moved away from this clustered approach to raising children to a very individualistic approach to raising children. And I think this has to some extent shifted the cultural approach to this issue. But what unfortunately has also happened is that the legislation we have in place, which is really wonderful, hasn't necessarily been fully implemented. And so what we attempt to do as the Commission is to monitor government's implementation of this legislation to ensure that these rights are realized.
Yeah, it's vitally important. And it's also reported that all of crimes perpetuated against children, half of those are sexual crimes.
Absolutely,
and
which
is devastating.
Deeply disturbing, because this has a knock-on effect. Many abused children often, unfortunately, go on to become abusers themselves. And so you have a cycle of violence that's perpetuated in our society. And certainly one of the major problems that we face, as you know. So clearly an intervention needs to happen at the earliest stages of a child's development through these nutrition programs, through prevention mechanisms to prevent violence against children.
Yeah, I mean, it really is an indictment on an individual, on the communities, and what's happening on the ground, the way children are treated. And it is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The best interest of the child is absolutely paramount, and the Constitution makes this provision very, very clear. But you're right, I think the way in which children are treated is often a reflection of how our society treats each other. And this is essentially the point that Nelson Mandela has made on a number of occasions, being one of the major champions for children's rights in South Africa.
How much groundwork do you do? I mean, obviously we know that there's lots of conferences and lots of administration, lots of research, but going out there and physically helping communities.
So one of the major things we've done is to go into communities, and we recognize as the Human Rights Commission that we've not done enough of this. And so one of the major plans over the next 3 years is to ensure greater access to rural communities in particular, as well as peri-urban communities, where a lot of children are negatively affected by the statistics that we were talking about earlier on. So a lot more outreach needs to happen. One of the major things we did recently was to visit a number of schools in the Eastern Cape, and we're also looking at healthcare facilities for children. And these are some of the mechanisms we're looking at to try and ensure that children's rights are protected as the Commission.
All right, just quickly tell me about this roundtable and how it's expected to assist.
So the roundtable brings together a number of stakeholders which assesses and reviews the government's compliance with the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Unfortunately, our government has again not done particularly well in this regard. We submitted the very first report, but 3 reports are outstanding to the Committee on the Rights of the Child, which essentially reflects a very negative attitude, a lack of political will, in my view, to essentially fulfill the values and the rights in the CRC. And so we're trying to encourage government, and we've been working alongside government to ensure that these reports are submitted, that the provisions of the CRC are upheld. And this is essentially what we're attempting to do at today's roundtable.
All right. Well, always great talking to you. Thank you very, very much for being our guest here. Kayum Ahmed is the CEO of the Human Rights Commission, talking to us on this Children's Day here in South Africa that's celebrated globally around the world. All right, let's take a quick break. When we return, we've got that